Okay, I'm gonna do a check of my panel. I'm actually gonna turn my TCAS switch on so that way it can begin doing its scans and things like that. There's not really a whole lot of traffic around here, so I don't have a whole lot to worry about. Okay, so we're almost ready to go. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the jet bridge from the plane. To do that in Flight Simulator, it's Control J. And that's going to move the jet bridge. Also remember to close the door too. Forgot. Okay. So that's there. At this point I'm going to remove wheel chocks from the plane. Select that, and then I'm going to press Control and the period button to turn my parking brake on. I'm also going to set up some pushback information. I don't really know where I need to go yet. The way I do that is I honestly just look at the airport from overhead and I figure out where the hell am I? Where the hell do I need to be? So I think I had runway shit if I know. Runway 16 left selected for taking off. Runway 16 left is going to be the runway closest to me. Yes, the runway closest to me is the one I'm going to use. So, I'm about ready to start getting this thing ready to go. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my anti-collision light. And that's going to be the red beacon light on top. Next I'm going to turn my fuel pumps on. Probably all of them just for the time being. Actually, I take that back. There's no fuel in my center tank, so I actually don't need those lights. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my pushback information. I want my nose of the plane to be turned 90 degrees to the right, because I'm going to have to, from where I'm parked, I'm going to have to turn to the right in order to get to the taxi, or to the runway for takeoff. Next, I only want them to push me straight back about maybe, I'll just say 50 feet for the hell of it. Input that information. Next, I'm going to press start. And that'll trigger the start back or pushback procedure.
You're all set to go up here. We've been cleared to push and start at your discretion.
Alternatively, you can press Shift P on your keyboard and it'll do the same thing. I'm going to turn off my parking brake by pressing the period button.
Okay, parking brake is off. Cleared to push.
And now, they're going to start pushing me back.
Brakes off.
So while I'm pushing back, I'm going to go ahead and start my engines up. In order to start engines, you have to make sure that if your APU is on and active, that first you have your APU bleed switch on, which mine is. You want to make sure that packs are both off, and these are recirculating fans, those have to be off as well. You have to make sure of that. So APU bleed, packs off, and recirculating fans off. Once you've confirmed that, you go down here. I'm going to start the right engine first and then the left engine. So in order to start, you switch your ignition to both. Then you go to your starter and you want to click your starter and put it into ground. Once your starter's been selected to ground, you can actually look down here at your engine panel and you'll see that everything is starting to kind of spool up. Once you're into, or your high compressor speed number gets to around 24, you go down to your fuel cutoff switch right there on your throttle quadrant and you switch that up. So I'm starting engine 2, so I want to make sure that I put the fuel cutoff for engine 2 on. And now the engine is going to proceed to start. Oh, and it's a pretty bad pushback, but that's what you get for having a computer take care of that for you. Once the pushback is done, I'm going to set my parking brake with control period. And now that there's an engine running, that means that all of the electronics and anything that relies on hydraulic pressure is functioning at 100%. So at this point I can actually go ahead and lower flaps. I'm using an Xbox controller to do that, so I have a button command to do control surfaces without having to intervene with the mouse or anything like that. So engine 2 is started. It's leveled out. Next, I'm going to select engine 1, turn the starter to ground. It's going to be the same thing. This is going to start spooling up. Once this gets to about 24, the fuel cutoff switch for engine 1 is going to be turned on. Okay, and now engine 1 is going to spool up to its idle speed. This is just the timer clock, so I can kind of see how long I've been out of the gate. So now both engines are pretty much getting to where they need to be. This engine 1 still needs a little bit of time to get to its level idle point. So now with both engines spooled up to where they need to be, what we can do is we can go here, back to our electricity switch, and generator 1, generator 2, those are talking about the engines. So once both engines are on, you can select generator 1, generator 2. So now all electricity is being supplied by the engines. So I can actually turn one of these switches to either generator 1 or generator 2. It'll give me the power output. Once you have the power going through the engines and not the APU, you can actually go to the APU switch and turn that off. Actually, hold on, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack. First you need to set your bleed switches for engine 1, engine 2. Those need to be turned on first, and the APU bleed switch can be turned off. Then you can turn your packs to auto. Then you can turn your recirculating fans to auto as well. Then, at that point, I can actually turn off the APU. APU will enter a cooldown phase and then turn itself off. Nothing enough to worry about. I'm actually going to turn on my taxi light at this point. And then I'm going to do a control surfaces test. The control surfaces panel or screen is going to pop up right here in the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press the system button right in here, system. And then I'm going to do stick to the left. And I'm just going to see to make sure that everything is moving. Stick to the right, make sure everything is moving. Then I'm going to pull back on the stick. And then push forward on the stick. And I'm going to test the rudder. And so now I know everything is functional. I can switch this back to the engine right here. I'm also going to set my auto brake to RTO, which is for rejected takeoff. And then since I'm on VATSIM, I just want to let people know, for anyone who's around, what's going on. So I'm going to type in KSLC TFC, which is just my abbreviation for traffic. I'm just going to let them know that I'm taxiing to runway 16 left for takeoff. That's just so in case there's other people who are trying to do the same thing, they have an idea what's going on. Okay, at this point, I'm actually going to begin my taxi, so I'm going to turn off my parking brake. and to give the engines a little bit throttle. And I'm gonna taxi my happy ass over to the runway. That plane behind me is actually another person who's using VATSIM. Funnily enough, I think they said they're gonna take off on the runway opposite of me, so we'll see. At this point, I have no master caution signs. On the overhead, I have nothing highlighted in orange. Everything has been extinguished. Everything is where it needs to be. My TCAS is on. Both of my radios are set. I have my flaps set to 5 degrees. My auto brake is set to projected takeoff. I don't need any spoilers for takeoff. I don't need any of that. My autopilot is pretty much set for the initial climb. My V-speeds are all set. My altimeter is set. The altimeter as in barometric pressure has been set. That guy is taxiing to the runway opposite of me, so we'll basically be in communication with each other to make sure we don't collide. This person is saying they're 22 miles out and that they're going to be doing a final approach on runway 34 right. So that's also another player who's using VATSIM. So I'm pretty much all set up for takeoff. All I have to do is just get to the runway, flip a couple more switches once I get there, and then just make sure I'm not going to hit anybody. I'm gonna ask this guy. KW 1861. I just want to ask that guy about how long it's going to be till he shows up to the airport, because he's going to be flying. He's going to be arriving on the runway that I'm taking off on in the opposite direction. I'll also press this button here, terrain, since I know Salt Lake City is a pretty mountainous place. I just want to get some information on as to where mountains and things like that are. So that guy I was speaking to said he's going to be down in just a few minutes. He's a few miles out. So he's going to be doing his final approach very soon. So I'm actually going to have to wait until he's ready. So unfortunately I'm going to have to wait a few minutes.